morning. This is Rich Sierra, president of Florida Small Business Legal Center. This is episode number 17 of Business SOS. We've been doing now, this is the 17th episode. Very excited. We started a few months ago with this exciting podcast to talk about my book, Business SOS, 8 Common Legal Mistakes Business Owners Make and How to Avoid Them. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and you can ask for it in your local bookstores. In the last few weeks, I spent some time talking about I want to buy a business, or what should I do? When I spent a good amount of time talking about due diligence. If you have not seen that, heard that episode, it's actually a 2-part series. I give you the top 10 tips to look for when you're looking to buy a business. And also, I believe the next episode, one of the episodes I talk about is what to do if you want to sell your business. So this is also related to this. But I want you to take a look, listen to those episodes as well, if you're thinking about buying or selling a business. Today, I'm going to start a series on franchising. I think it's important. I mean, there are thousands of franchises all over the country, and many startups, business owners who are thinking about buying a business or going into business for themselves look at franchising as a way to get started. And there's a misconception that getting into a franchise is actually easy. Getting out of it is very difficult, but also running a franchise is not as easy as it sounds. And there are, many franchise expos all over the country that kind of invite business owners to really look at this, and they sell you kind of this business opportunity. But what I want to talk to you today is what to look for when you're looking to buy a franchise. So I'll give you an example. Yesterday, actually, I spoke with a prospective client, actually an actual client, who asked me to review the franchise disclosure document of a consulting company that they help, it's kind of they help businesses with different growth patterns. We can call it a business coaching. There are many different ways, but I'm just going to characterize business coaching. There was nothing wrong with the franchise itself, but the questions that I asked of him, they were outside of the franchise disclosure document. And I think that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. First of all, the franchise disclosure document is a document that is required by the Federal Trade Commission. There are 21 required disclosures that they have to give to you by law in order to allow you to sell your franchise. And they give you 14 days to review that document before you actually sign a contract. Again, these are required documents they got to provide to you, but it doesn't tell you the full story. So I reviewed the franchise disclosure document, and I actually go online and look at the franchise itself, look what reviews they have, look at the history, so I have a better idea exactly what product or service they're selling. And all franchises have something in common. They have a trademark that they are basically a brand name that they're basically allowing you to use through their franchise model. They have a system that they're selling you, that you follow that system, and they cannot guarantee success, but based on their practices, it appears to be a successful model because they have, in some cases, franchises all over the country. Most famous franchises, you have Subway, you have McDonald's. I'm not sure Burger King is a franchise. I think they're company owned, but they're, many Dunkin' Donuts, another franchise. So they have a consistent business model, which if you follow it, most likely you'll be successful because they're successful all over the country. So what I asked the question when I talk to business owners, and many people are going into franchises who have not owned a business before. And that is a concern, that a red flag for me, because then I need to ask more questions about the business owner, my client, before they actually decide to jump into the franchise. And it is very common you have a husband and wife team that maybe have money in the 401k, as I mentioned before, and then they decide that they want to open a franchise to kind of like use that for retirement. So I ask more questions. So what to look for in a franchise. And today I'm very excited to have a live studio audience. My friends, Mike and Sherry. Hey, how are you? The so so what to look in a franchise? So the first question that I ask is like, okay, what motivated you to look for this franchise? What interests you? What background do you have? What is your background? I want to know more about you to know whether or not this might be a good fit for you. Uh, so I kind of get that information from the client. And then number two, I said, have they read the FDD, or they ask me to read it and kind of interpret it? And a lot of times they don't read it. They swear, it's just a 200-page document. And now they're shorter. There may be 50, 100 pages to review. And it's kind of overwhelming if you do not know what to look for. Today, I'm not going to go into the actual details of the FDD. What I'm going to do is really give you more of a big picture of what to look for if you're looking to buy a franchise, which is very similar to when you buy a business. And then in the following episodes, I'm going to actually go in more detail about the 21 disclosures that are required by the FTC and what to look for in a franchise disclosure document if you're reviewing one. But today we're not going to do that simply because it's going to be a longer episode, and I probably have to break it down in maybe 2 or 3 segments, but we'll do that in the following episode. So you already know that the FDD the document is basically, it's going to include the disclosures. It's going to include the copy of the franchise agreement. It's going to include also a list of the franchisees that are current, people that have left. They give you some financial documents. But more importantly, they give you a copy of the franchise agreement that is not going to be signed. It's simply a template or what they use for the franchise agreement. One of the things you're going to see, and this is really a point that I've made before that bothers me about franchises, is that they require in some cases a very large franchise fee up front that is non-refundable, and you really have not had all the answers yet to whether or not this business is right for you before you actually pay this franchise fee. And I'll give you an example. In some case, in this particular franchise, the franchise fee was around $30,000. And again, it's not uncommon for that to happen. In some cases, I've seen franchises that, in terms of restaurant franchises, could be as high as $50,000, if not more. So the franchise fee is not refundable. And I don't know why it's not refundable if you really haven't had a chance to make a decision on whether you want to do it. In a case that a franchise requires a location, like a restaurant or a service business or accounting firm, and then they really depend on an actual location where you're going to be operating from, then you pay this franchise fee of $30,000, but yet you have not secured a lease, you have not secured a location, and that location has to be approved at the franchisor. So in essence, you basically, once you pay this franchise fee, you're stuck, because you're not going to be able to get out of it unless you put a contingency in that, or an addendum in that franchise agreement that said, listen, I'm willing to pay this franchise fee, but if I'm not able to find a location that is acceptable to me, not to them, then you should be able to get that money back. In some cases, the franchisor is willing to agree to that. In some cases, they won't. But that's kind of a point that I have that bothers me, that you have not selected a location, you have not been trained, and you don't know whether training is going to work or not, and you're already committed to a franchise fee of $30,000, hoping that it works. The moment you pay the franchise fee, you're stuck. You basically have to go through with it and hope that it works. So if you're looking at a franchise, my suggestion is to try to negotiate a contingency that you can get that money back if indeed the lease does not work out, or you don't find an acceptable lease that you're happy with, or other contingencies. And sometimes it's financing. So take a look at the refund deposit, see whether it's refundable or not. It's not refundable, but just make sure that at least you can negotiate that. Royalties. Pretty much all franchises, most franchise agreements that I've seen require some royalties. That's the way they get paid. You're buying their system, you're buying their training, you're buying their intellectual property. So you have to basically find out okay, out of every dollar that I bring in to my business, okay, using this franchise model, how much will the franchisor get from the top? And it is from the top, meaning that say you get $100 for every, $100 in revenue, the franchisor may get 7%, may get 10%. I've seen it as high as 15% of whatever money you bring in. But that's from the top. That's before you pay any expenses whatsoever, paying yourself, paying your lease, salaries. So that you have to take that into account. There's also very common that in franchises you have a marketing fee. It could be 1%, could be 3%, 5%, we don't know. So there's so in addition to the royalties that you're going to be paying the franchisor, you're also going to be paying a marketing fee, a certain percentage. And that's part of the FDD disclosures that when I read it, and I'll basically pull that out, and I'm telling you now so that way you can look it up yourself and begin to add how much actually you're going to be paying on top of the royalties in terms of a franchise fee. There's also a national advertising fee in some cases that on top of that, you got to pay a certain percentage for them to be able to promote the national brand. And that's part of the benefit as a franchisee, that you're getting a brand that is national in some cases or statewide. So the franchisor does advertising on its own to promote the brand. So that way you have the name recognition, people associate that brand and that advertising with you. So that they have to collect the money somewhere. Clearly they're getting it from the franchisees. But you have to look at that as well. Something that I only saw in one FDD the last 18 years is that what is the average sale of that product that you're selling? And in this particular one, it was not there. And I asked my client, do you know what is the price point here? Do you know what is the average sale like? He said, I don't know. And I'm like, well, how are you going to determine the type of projected revenue that you're going to have if you do not know what is the average sale of this product, the service that you're selling? So that's a good question. So you have a list of franchisees in your FDD, which he was not aware of that. I pointed where the franchisees are located at. And I said, just you have, 15 phone numbers here. Start making phone calls. That is something you can do without putting actually the deposit. And that's part of your due diligence because they're giving you the information. So if you choose not to make a phone call to a franchisee or somebody who left the franchise, which I think in this case is more important, then it's on you because they're telling you, these are the people that are doing business with us. These are the people that are in the system. They give you the phone numbers so you can call them, introduce yourself and find out what's working for them, what is not working for them. So at least you have that information. But you need to know at the very least how much the price point of the average sale is, because that's going to determine the revenue that you will need to cover your expenses, especially when your startup costs are very high. The startup costs of the franchise are very high because you'll have to have a minimum advertising expense that you have to expend. There'll be a minimum grand opening startup costs in some cases that they want you to generate, to spend in order to give visibility to the franchise. And that is good business practices. You're going to open a brand new business. People have to know who you are. And you'll have to basically upfront or generate or spend more money in that initial startup to get the word out. But this required by the franchisor that you have to spend some money. So the startup cost it's usually in the FDD, there's within the first 10 pages, if not sooner or earlier, there's usually a table that you will see that tells you all the startup costs. And they give you ranges. They cannot tell you exactly what it is because they don't know. Every situation is different, but they give you good ranges about the amount of money you need to have in order to go into the franchise. So right off the bat, you have to look at that and say, okay, If it costs me $300,000 as a startup cost, if I have to do a build out, if I have to hire employees, do I have the capital to be able to start this franchise? So it gives you right there, very in great detail, what the startup costs are in ranges, because nothing is exact. Now, something that a franchisor cannot do, it give you a projected sales. They cannot tell you you're expected to make X number of dollars. That's something they cannot do. But they can tell you, okay, call our franchisees and then ask them if they give you, kind of a range of how well they're doing. The franchisor can share with you, our average franchisee earns X number of dollars, but that does not mean that it's going to be your exact representation. It's going to be your situation. So you got to find that information out, and I think you need to ask questions, and that is subjective. Another item that I look for is stability of the franchise. It is very easy for a business to franchise. When I say it's very easy, meaning that what is required for a business to say, okay, I want to become a franchise, it is not difficult to the extent that what you need to do is basically develop a franchise disclosure document. And it is a difficult document to write to the extent that it's a long document, but it's not difficult in reference to the content of information that it contains. So you have a cleaning company and there are a number of cleaning company franchises, and you want to franchise. So you can hire an attorney that specializes in writing these documents, and or a consultant. In some cases, there are consultants that write these documents. Pay a certain amount, a few $1,000s, and before you know it, you have an FDD, you have an operations manual, and guess what? You're actually a franchisor in this case. And with that, you can begin selling franchises. So it is not a really difficult entry point to do that. So I look for the stability of the franchise about how soon the franchise, when did the franchise begin, and how long they've been in business. I also look at the financials of the franchise. One of the items in the franchise disclosure document, it's a franchise, is financial statements. And so I look at that in terms of the stability, the type of revenue they have, cash in hand, liabilities, debts. So to tell me whether or not they have the manpower required to provide support to a new franchisee. I look at the training, how much training this franchisee is going to receive to be able to be successful. And if you recall me talking about in prior episodes, I talk about the learning curve. Just because you buy a business does not mean that you immediately, and you spend a week with the owner, if the owner actually stays, that you will actually go ahead and you'll learn how to run that business. It's just not going to happen. It's going to take some time, you going in there and spending time in that business to learn how to run it. So in a franchise, the same way. In the same way that you will receive some training from the corporate office. In some cases, you'll have to fly to the headquarters and receive some actual classroom training. In some cases, you might have to spend some time with another franchisee and their business location to learn how to run it. So a question to ask is, what type of training will I receive in order to be successful at the franchise, and what support is the franchisor going to provide to you after you receive that training to ensure that you're doing things the right way? So that's a question you need to ask. And you need to ask that from the people who are currently running the franchise. Location, or territory. This is extremely important. So there's some franchises that give you a specific territory. And it could be, basically whether it could be a city, whether it's a county, whether it's a number of zip codes. They determine that because by having the territory design, then they can sell more franchises. So you have to determine, depending on the type of service, product or service you're actually going to be providing with the franchise, okay, what is going to be the territory and why that territory was selected and how it was designed. And I'll give you an example. And this example that I'm giving you, it's a consulting company selling, educational training for companies, for example. And their territory is based on 25,000 businesses. So my question to my client was, okay, so do you know how they determine the territory, and what criteria do they use to make that determination? If, when he told me that their market is really employers that have over 25 employees or more, and I'm like, so they're not that many. I mean, when you look at the average small business, we're talking about companies that have over 25 employees. That's a sizable company in some cases. And so you have to basically determine how many actual potential clients you will have in that particular territory. I mean, I can give you a zip code and I'll tell you there's, 20,000 businesses here. But if the majority are businesses that have less than 25 employees, or maybe 3% of those have 25 employees and above, then your actual target market is a lot smaller. So you have to really go granular as to why the territory was selected and what is the market potential for you to be able to actually be successful. If it's a restaurant franchise, for example, and they say, okay, you're going to have a territory of 5-mile radius, which is very common in, say, pizza restaurant franchises. And I said, okay, so the 5-mile radius that you will select, why was that? What is a 5-mile radius selected, and what is the territory like? So you have to look at, okay, what is the actual household income of that area? If it's in a upper middle class neighborhood, then most likely they will be ordering a lot of takeout. They'll go out a lot. If it's in an area that is not as affluent, perhaps you may not have the volume of sales. In this particular case, I'm using a pizza restaurant that you might be anticipating to basically generate the revenue. So you have to kind of look at that. The territory is very important. You have to do your own research. You have to run your own due diligence, and a qualified attorney who has experience doing this can help you with that. And these are things that are not going to be on your FDD. In fact, the franchise disclosure document is not going to tell you what is going to be your territory. You'll be talking to a sales rep. Again, the sales rep's job is to sell franchises. So listen, we have this territory. Of course, everybody's looking at this territory. If you don't get this territory today, somebody's going to get it. There's always a sense of urgency. So you have to kind of think very clearly and ask those questions. That's not going to be in the FDD. So you have to basically do your own due diligence with that. I mentioned before interviewing past and current and former franchisees. This is very important. In fact, my suggestion, if you're really serious about buying a specific franchise and you're able to go and visit a franchise and do a secret shopper visit, just go as a customer and go and basically, if it's a food, just go have a meal. Just do secret shopper and find out more about it. The more research you do at the front end, the less headaches you will experience in the back end. So you have to kind of look at that and really do your own due diligence. So if you have a theme here that in this podcast is that you have to go beyond the documents they provide to you. The FDD it's only the beginning of your research and your journey to purchase a franchise. A lot of the information that you will obtain in making that determination about whether or not to go forward with the purchase is going to be outside of that document. You got to do your own due diligence or get somebody to help you with that. We certainly can do that. So let me recap some of the points that I talked today. Okay. The FDD is a very important document that you need to look at. And before you pay any money, and my suggestion, if you do not understand that document, have somebody help you review it and also help you go over the items that the questions that you have, but also important items that you might not have thought of in terms of evaluating the purchase of a franchise. The franchise fee, whether it's not going to be refundable. So to the extent that you can negotiate a refundability of the franchise fee, if you decide not to go through with the franchise, try it. Most of the time they will say no, but you never know. So at least give it a shot. At the very least, a financing contingency is extremely important. At the very least, on a lease contingency is extremely important as well. And we talked in prior episodes about lease agreements. Your startup costs are very important. You need to know, and you have to know what the startup costs are of the franchise, and they tell you how much it is, and they're for the most part right on the spot. But you also have to be conservative and know that whatever franchise starting cost that they tell you is probably going to be higher, simply because things will sometimes go wrong and things will be unexpected, and you got to be prepared for that. So just understand that when you're looking at the startup cost. And if you're going to finance the franchise, then that's another conversation about financing. We'll have another time. But you have to look at what it's going to cost for you to finance that franchise, how much money you're going to contribute as a down payment, and then how much you're going to finance. So on top of your royalties, on top of your working capital that you will have, you're also going to have a loan, you have a lease. So you got to put that in a pro forma and basically do a business plan to see how this is going to work out. And as I mentioned before in prior episodes, if it does not work on paper, it will not work in real life. You have to basically work it on paper. And the worst can happen is you decide, you know what, I made the analysis, I kind of ran the numbers, I'm not going through with this. That's fine. That's the worst can happen, okay? You save yourself $30,000 in a franchise fee and headaches along the way. But at the same time, if it looks that the numbers work out, then at the very least, you know what to expect, and they will not have surprises later on along the way. Look for the stability of the franchise. How long they've been around is important. And nothing wrong with new franchises. That's, you got to start somewhere. But understand, basically that the franchise can support you. And that they're actually providing support to the franchisees. So you have to look at that as well. The location and territory, mentioned that before, extremely important. Find out the actual location, find out there's another franchisee nearby, and within that location, find out whether or not, what if I decide to take not only this location, but have a first right to buy the location next to me to prevent a franchisee from actually being there. So you have both locations. So those things that we talk about in our consultations. Interviewing past and current and, current and former franchisees. I cannot stress that upon you enough. Do your due diligence, interview people, ask questions. Because usually the franchisees, once you become a franchisee, they're going to be your support system. Sometimes you need supplies, sometimes you need something. You need to basically get to know these people. You're going to be part of that franchisee network that will be helping you if you decide to go forward with it. A business plan is very important. And my suggestion is, as you look at the franchise, do a business plan and identify the competitors, identify the threats, the opportunities. And at some point, I'm going to bring a guest to talk about business planning. And there are many good business plans, templates online that you can basically download or purchase. And also mentioned before, SCORE. If you're a brand new business owner, SCORE provides free mentoring to new business owners. You can just sign up. In fact, I had a client 2 weeks ago, Kristen Long, said that she signed up with SCORE and she had a mentoring session with them because of our podcast. So that's a resource you can use, and again, it won't cost you anything. This is it for episode 17 of Business SOS. So a couple of times ago, I mentioned to you that I want you to participate in the show. So if you have any legal questions that you want me to discuss in the show, send them to me at richsierra.com. And then I'm happy to take a look at the legal question, address it. If I select your question, I'll go ahead and I'll send you an autographed copy of my book, Business SOS. If you want to learn more about the legal services that we offer, go to floridasmallbusinesslegalcenter.com. We're in Facebook at FSB Legal. We also have this podcast on video as well. So if you want to look at the video, it is at youtube.com at Richard Sierra. We're on Twitter, now it's X, as Rich_Sierra. We're on Instagram at FSB Legal. You want to call us, number is 866-842-5202. If you like the podcast, please follow the show and give us a review. That actually helps the algorithms to recommend this show to other business owners. If you feel this might be helpful to a colleague or friend, for you to share it as well. We're in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you enjoy your shows. Remember Business SOS, 8 common legal mistakes business owners make and how to avoid them. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can ask for your local bookstores. Until next week, this is Rich Sierra with the Florida Small Business Legal Center. Remember that my goal is to help you succeed.